Well, a very good afternoon to you on this eighth day of the extension to our lockdown in South Africa. My name is Mark Long, and I am rector of the parish of St Andrews in Newlands, Cape Town. I'd like to reflect a little on the reading from John chapter 6, verses 1 to 15 from our Eucharist readings today. It's the story of the feeding of the 5,000. John tells the story as a test of the disciples, a test in terms of their trust in God's provision and also in Jesus' presence in their midst. It's again a form of encounter. In the story, we discover that a young chap is discovered with 5 barley loaves and a couple of fish, and he is willing to share that. I think something of the miracle is that as this young chap shares what he has, so others are encouraged to be generous with the little that they have. And we discover that that crowd is fed and sufficient food is left over to fill 12 baskets. It's a challenging thought in today's world and in South Africa at the moment. Lockdown has created a huge impact on our economy. People's lives are at risk in terms of the economy. Jobs are lost. Businesses are going to be struggling going forward. And I think a question we're all kind of asking is, do we have sufficient to survive? And for many in our land, as many have done with the hugely high employment rates that we have, many of us perhaps are just joining them in looking at a bare cupboard and saying, where does the next meal come from? And perhaps this virus has brought us to a point of having a little bit more empathy and compassion for others who have less than we do. But as this food is shared, we see that generosity being sparked in each other. And I think that that's one of the challenges for us today, is to look at the resources that God has given us and to be thoughtful and prayerful in the way that we seek to use those resources ourselves, but compassionate in recognizing other people's needs and sharing what we have. In lockdown, perhaps we've discovered over the last 25 plus days that actually we can survive on a huge amount less than we thought we could, and that there's actually a whole lot that we could share without too much difficulty. I was struck this week when I saw how much, if you're willing just to buy the basics, how much you can actually buy for 350 Rand. It's not going to create any sumptuous meals, but certainly it is enough for survival. And that was heartening to see that, and a challenge for all of us, I think, to move to a greater level of simplicity in our lives. And maybe that's something that will grow out of this time. Struck too by the packages that the President announced on Tuesday night, the 500 billion that has been borrowed to re-stimulate our economy. Just under R1 million being invested in each person if you divide our population into that amount. And I think a challenge for us in just reflecting that is in fact what's being invested, and a need to hold our government and other structures accountable for how that investment is made on our behalf. And that will be one of the challenges as we move into different stages of lockdown going forward. But I think part of it all is just recognizing, and John 6 highlights this, that in fact, generally speaking, there is always sufficient for everyone. It's our own ability to hoard, it's our own ability to often put ourselves ahead of others that means that that sufficiency is not shared. And one of the challenges going forward for us as a nation is how do we really embrace a new way of living, a new way of seeing life, and allowing the generosity and the provision of God to make a real difference in our own lives, in the communities that we're part of, and of course in our wider nation.